The following program is being brought to you on the Voice America Women's Channel. For more information about our network and to check out additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericawomen.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
Do you have aspirations to be a leader in your business or organization? Welcome to Leadership Stars with your host, Linda Patten. Each week, we feature true leaders, recognized in their fields, who provide insight and ideas in creating a strong team and how you can become an effective leader. Now, here is Linda Patten.
Well, once again, let me welcome you personally to Leadership Stars, where real leaders in network distribution, entrepreneurship, and government who have boldly and unapologetically stepped into their leadership will be interviewed on their journey and will share their views on all the aspects of creating and leading powerful teams, even if right now that team is only one. I am your host, Linda Patten. I am an international speaker and recently an international best-selling author, as well as the creator of the book and program, The Art of Herding Cats, Leading Teams of Leaders. Now, herding cats comes from my journey of stepping out as a major in the military and a VP in corporate and owning my own leadership. And the program teaches you the 12 key steps of leadership. Through Herding Cats, I guide leaders to uncover core strengths, to inspire with shared vision, and to realize their true expertise. I've been successfully developing leaders for over 40 years in the military, in organizations, and for the last 5 years with Dare to Dream with Linda, independently as a coach, mentor, and guide. Today we're going to answer these questions. How do you as a leader make amazing shifts in relationships from the superficial to the extraordinary? Is it possible to have lasting, deep relationships without getting too close? And how do you rewire your brain to think and feel differently about relationships? And to discuss this, I have a relationship expert. Dr. Gary Salyer has been working with individuals, couples, and now we're going to talk about teams and their relationship and how to be safe, again, to relate. So let's welcome Dr. Salyer. Gary, how are you?
I'm doing well, Linda. How are you doing?
I am awesome on this beautiful day. Gary, I know you have a really extensive background with relationships. Could you tell the audience just a little bit about your background and why relationships are so important to you?
Yeah, my real expertise is neuroscience and attachment theory. Attachment theory is the science of how people form their relationships, and we've been studying that for 75 years. It's not random. We can predict by the time a child is 1 what type of relationships they will tend to form in life, barring any intervention. And that's really important. I've also been trained with the Gottmans and the science of couples. And so what I really do is I try to combine the heart and science in a way that allows people to shift without having to, to completely overhaul their life. I want to change. So I work at helping people find change that's easy, but also allows them to connect deeply.
Gary, you said something very interesting about you can tell by year 1 what types of relationships a child is going to have. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Yes. There's something called attachment theory, and we've known this really since the 50s. There was an experiment done by one of the 4 founders, a woman by the name of Mary Ainsworth. And what she found out was she first worked with mothers in Africa and noticed that they held their children for 3 years, and these children came out to be extremely well-balanced, loving, secure without anxiousness children. Then when she came to America, there was the spot doctrine where children were allowed to be more distant, rational distance. So she came up with this experiment where at 1 to year and a half, she brought children into a room with scientists all looking into nicely, cleverly disguised mirrors. Mm-hmm. And when the child was taken out, when the mother was taken out, they would notice the reaction of the child. And when the mother came in, there were 3 predictable ways these children tended, or ways they responded. And from them, they found out by tracking these children for the next 30 years that those tendencies tracked the rest of their life. The first one was the secure baby, who was upset, but hey, they were kind of expecting mom to come back. Mom always does. They calmed down. They went out and played with their toys, and they used mom as a secure base of exploration. The other group of babies looked precocious and well-balanced, and they just stayed and played with their toys. It was like mom never left. But what we found out later was that they had grown up not expecting mom to be there, and later these became what were called avoidant babies. Mm-hmm. They were the people that were mostly comfortable with distance. They were not comfortable with closeness, not comfortable with commitment. So what looked like maturity was actually, hey, I don't think you're here for me. And then there were the anxious babies. These babies would fuss and cry and hit and complain, and they were inconsolable, and they would protest, and they would barely be able to move out to play. They wanted mom, but they would also hit her, and these became the anxious, and they become more of the people that are always worried when love goes away. Why didn't you text me last night? And these 3 things, these 3 styles, are all set up by the time you're 1 year old. That's how early love gets wired in your brain.
Wow, that's really impressive. So how does that translate into the feeling of being safe in a relationship?
Well, the Holy Grail, that's what I'm writing about in my book. The Holy Grail for anybody is to have a secure love style. And my definition of a secure love style in the scientific sense is they take no BS and they give no BS. The secure know that they have a right to feel welcomed with joy in a relationship. They know they have a right to feel worthy and nourished, to have their needs met. They have a right to feel cherished and protected, and also empowered with choice. That's what's underneath a secure love style. 4 feelings that tell you are securely loved. You're welcomed, you're worthy, you're cherished and protected, and you're empowered. If you look at any of the other 2 love styles, the avoidants were usually not welcomed with joy, and they usually can't give it. The anxious were often not worthy of having their needs met, and they frequently don't have empowered with choice either. So when you have missing feelings about the way you are in relationships or what you expect from relationships, you tend to react in a way that doesn't commit, doesn't create a we, only wants to do things by yourself, or the other one that is more of a fight response, where we say, I'm going to lock this down at all costs. And that fighting inevitably drives people away, and the anxious often will create their own worst experience because people can't handle that sort of drama that doesn't feel safe. That's the sort of thing that's going on. So we want those serious, secure feelings so we have a calm relationship where people feel safe.
Very interesting. So, Gary, do you find it has something to do with family dynamics? For example, do you see more of the by myself individual who was an only child, or is there a correlation between the number of children in the family as well as maybe birth order as to where you would fit in these 3 styles?
Not necessarily. What really determines it is the quality of the way your mother and father respond to your needs. At the basis of everybody's attachment is sort of a system that says, it's called contingent communication. When a baby cries, do you respond to them? When a young toddler is going around and just about ready to fall off that chair or something, you go and make sure they are protected, and then they feel cherished. as a teenager, when they ask for an allowance, are you willing to work with them? How we respond to our needs, that's the big predictor. It's not so much family order or anything like that. You could have a firstborn child and an only-born child that is well responded to, and they'll grow up feeling really secure. You could have an only child that is not, and they will tend to be either anxious or avoidant. So it's really the quality of the response that determines it.
So, audience, you hear it. Starting with before age 1, you actually form the type of relationships your children are going to have simply by how you respond to their needs. That's very, very critical. I think that's very important, Gary, for all of us. I know I was an only child. I had older adults who worked, who were in and out, and I learned to play pretty much by myself. So developing relationships has been a work in progress, needless to say, through my life. And I have to say that being married for 43 years to a fabulous man has really helped me to understand what a relationship is all about and how to have a healthy couple relationship. So how does this singularity of style then match into couples relationships?
Well, the same thing is going on with couples. It's just higher level game, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
The bottom line for couples is we call them bids. Bids for attention or bids for support. Hi, honey. Do you see that bird over there? Oh, yeah. That is a nice bird. Now, or, honey, is the salt around here? Oh, yes, it's right over there. Those are bids for attention.
Okay.
And what we found out is when the Gottmans tracked couples, they brought them into what was called a love lab, and it's like a bed and breakfast, except like any other bed and breakfast, it had a bunch of scientists behind windows.
Mm-hmm.
And when they observed couples, they noticed they would have what they called the masters or the disasters. The masters were what I call the secure. And these people responded to bids 89% of the time. 89%. Believe it or not, the people who were the disasters responded 66% of the time. What that tells you is that to feel really secure in a relationship, you have to be a partner and have a partner who really picks up on the cues and responds at least in some measure. 2/3 isn't enough. We will not feel securely bonded. We need about 9 out of 10. And that's because at an old level, millions of years ago, 10, 20,000 years ago, and we're out in the forest, if someone isn't tracking us, or they're only tracking us 2/3 of the time, somebody's going to die. So it's a high level of the secure offer each other a lot of reciprocal bids, and they respond to them. That's one of the keys for couples, is knowing how to turn toward them with love and appreciation.
Wow, that's fascinating, Gary. And audience, I hope you hear this, that we talked long ago and far away about the fact that you have to put 200% into the relationship in order to even think that 100% might come back to you. And so, Gary, in essence, you validated that by saying paying attention to your spouse or to the other person in the relationship and being there to support them. And we all know from the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus that we oftentimes are very different in what we want in support and attention. And so can that also be a challenge for the couple?
Oh, yes. The Gottmans call that love map. And basically, where we learn a secure relationship early on, that little baby I told you about,
right,
is, well, what we found out is that we think that mothers are perfect at reading. That's kind of the myth, the child. Mm-hmm. And what happens is, though, that 70% of the time, the first response of a mother isn't right. But she's good at reading, at really picking up what's inside the mind of the baby. And there'll be a repair attempt. and she will make an effort to get it right. And when she does, the baby says, "Oh, Mom can get it wrong, but she gets it right. She gets me." That's what we have to offer our spouses. We have to step inside their mind. And if a baby isn't, if we don't step inside the mind and go, "Oh, you fell from your tricycle. You must be scared." And they go, "Yeah, that's what I'm feeling." That tells them they're loved. That tells them they're worried. That tells them church. So we do have to step into the mind of each other to feel securely attached and bonded, or else you feel like, hey, they're not present. They don't get me. Where are they at?
Oh, Gary, that's so critical. I love when I have clients who say to me, "Boy, you get me. You understand me." So I think it's not only important in love relationships, but it's also important in business relationships or client relationships or words along those lines. Now, I have one quick question for you before we dash off, and that has to do with texting. There was an interesting article on the news the other day that the suicide lines that have the texting capability have more teenagers text in than when they only have a telephone connection. So are we seeing a huge shift, and we just have a minute or so, a huge shift from that almost personal on the telephone communication to now wanting to distance ourselves into a more texting kind of thing? And just a real quick answer, and we'll come back to it after the break.
Actually, I wrote a section in my book that a lot of electronic media, social media, and texting is creating more and more an avoidant culture. I took it out because I thought, and then I had so many couples that had fights, I put it back in. There is no doubt that texting is a trend, but it's not the greatest secure form because it's very difficult to pick up on somebody's physiology, their reactions, their emotions with a text. And we only feel secure when we feel that someone else feels into us, when we feel felt. And it's difficult to feel felt when someone's offering you a text. So I tell all my couples, never do any type of negotiation with a text. It never goes good. People want to hear the resonance of love in your voice. They want to see it in your eyes.
Great. Thank you, Gary, so very, very much. And so, ladies and gentlemen, when you see people in restaurants and they're on a date and they're texting each other, call them on it. And with that note, we're going to take a quick break. See you in a minute.
Voice America Women's Channel, a leader in the forward movement of women's success.
Linda Patten draws from her 4 decades of leadership experience and her heartfelt passion to show women how to lead, dream, and create what inspires them. Her signature training programs and workshops will guide you through the key skills you need to own your leadership power, build your resources, plan your path, and take the actions that will translate your vision into reality. Start by scheduling a free, no-obligation 30-minute strategy session with Linda Patten. Contact her at linda@daretodreamwithlinda.com. That's Linda at dreamwithlinda.com.
Have you friended us on Facebook yet? Why not? Just go to facebook.com/Voice America or search for the keywords Voice America. Once you are part of our Facebook network, you'll receive daily messages about what's happening with our shows, this week's featured guests, and new happenings at the Voice America Talk Radio Network. And you can add your voice to the always active discussions on our timeline. Just go to facebook.com/Voice America or search for Voice America.
Voice America Women's Channel, a leader in the forward movement of women's success.
You are listening to Leadership Stars with Linda Patten. To reach the show today, please call 1-866-613-1612. That's 1-866-613-1612. You may also send an email to Linda at daretodreamwithlinda.com. Now, back to Leadership Stars.
Welcome back. I'm on with a very, very special guest, Dr. Gary Salyer. And Gary and I were having this real quick discussion while you all were listening in about texting and superficial relationships and this kind of thing. And Gary, I've been in network distribution off and on for probably the last 40 years. And one of the things that I've noticed in network distribution, and I think you noticed it in a slightly different context, is that once we enroll someone, the relationship tends to, quote, drop off. If you do have communication with them, it's often, gee, I noticed that your auto ship didn't go through and your team has really low group volume. What are you doing about this? And so what would you recommend for someone that would be different than that?
Well, if I'm reading you right, I actually have advised some entrepreneurs on this. I've had several seven-figure coaches who've come to work with me on, love and relationships, and then they ask this question. And what happens in the launch model, you send out an email, and it says, hey, I have a good friend here. And then you pass who has this great program, you pass it on, and people get there, and you get emails, and you might get a PDF or whatever. But what happens is, that's not, you've got a part of your brain that's 100 million years old. It's your mammal brain, and it's programmed to expect someone who really is close, they have some personal contact with. So we can't fool that part of our brain. So some part begins to say, I know I signed up for this, but it doesn't feel quite right. Because that part that's always looking for a bond, there's a part of our brain that says, am I bonded? If I'm bonded, I'm safe. If we don't feel bonded, then it doesn't feel safe, and then they don't feel motivated to attend the event or whatever. So what I did is I just called that out to one group I'm involved with and one really good friend of mine. And what they did is they found out that people weren't feeling connected when they signed them up to an event, and then they would drop out. So they hired a staff person whose sole responsibility was to welcome them with joy, that first feeling of a secure relationship. And then they went a step further and said, until the meeting, if you give us, the event, if you give us a meeting, we'll give you a little handout. We'll give you some free coaching for a half hour. So they were worthy of having their needs met. They doubled their attendance, and they made $300,000 extra at that event, because they made their people feel welcomed and worthy with a personal contact. It's amazing how, if you pay attention to our attachment system, how much better business works, because love really is the operating system. It's not a program in the brain beside business and love. Love is the basic way, tells our brain how to operate, and our attachment runs everything.
Wow, that's so important, and thank you. That whole welcome, I think, is very, very important. And one of the things that I taught, and it's in the systems and procedures portion of The Art of Herding Cats, is that whole onboarding process. How do you bring people on board? How do you make them feel welcome? How do you make them feel worthy of having their needs met? And that kind of thing. So you're right, so that they bond, and you have that same onboarding, that same building and bonding of the relationship, so that everyone that you bring on has that same sense of being secure in the relationship, and not that you're going to abandon them as soon as you get your first order bonus and you're on to the next person. I think that's really, really important. And I think you'd agree with that, Gary, yes?
I do. I mean, it's obvious that to run a successful business, you have to have some leverage. I understand that, because I'm running a business too. But you also have to have that lively conversation where they feel really connected. And that's really the trick for anybody who's running an entrepreneur or business. You have leverage, but it tends to weaken the bond. So you have to pay attention to the bonding meter between you and your people. When are they feeling supported, welcomed, and worthy? And that's just an art. Yeah, an email, maybe you need to send out, if an email is getting less response, maybe you need to send out some personal videos to people so they get more of a face contact with you.
Well, that's a really unique concept is doing video now that it seems to be the number one way to communicate with your folks. I agree. I had a team that every week they got some kind of an email from their senior leader, and the person would often, just send out a meme with a quote, or they might ask a question and want sort of as a survey kind of thing. And she really didn't think that they cared. She would get responses and everything else, but she was concerned that maybe it's just it's become background noise, and the people weren't really interested in it any longer. And she got very ill, and she was away from her customer relations management system for a while, for about 2-3 weeks, and she got a flood of emails from the people on our team going, "Are you okay? We didn't get the email on Thursday. We're really concerned. What can we do?" So it's interesting that even though we may not recognize that it's building that relationship, when you stop, it's interesting how they respond back going, "Oh my God, are you all right? What's wrong? Can we do something?" And so you have been building that relationship. You have been developing that welcome, worthy, supported sense in the people in your team. And I thought that was really, really, really powerful. So using your customer relations management to really keep in touch. And I also do like the idea of changing it up. Doing a video, maybe doing a phone call, that kind of thing, as well as, just the email addresses. So you have any other tips and tricks around this from our guests?
Well, the other thing, too, is you can even say, "Hey, I've been hearing, I want to know what you guys want to have in the newsletter. I'm going to be holding an hour call. I'll answer your questions, and then I'll see if I can write them." So you have an hour-long call. Your people call in. You have an hour, maybe not all of them. You get to ask the question, and then from those questions, you write the next set of emails that go out. Let it be interactive. Then the people feel like they're making a bid, and you are receiving, instead of just being on the receiving end. Allow them to make a bid.
Wow.
And then...
Yeah, what a great idea is to have them involved and to actually have a dialogue with them, as opposed to that monologue going out and not getting any response back. And, they have great ideas as well, and they're having different experiences that might be valuable to the other members of your team, right?
Exactly. And now and if you can validate those experiences, then they get that third feeling of a secure attachment, cherished and protected.
Ah.
And a little bit of empowerment choice. Those 4 feelings, if you can make your people feel worthy, welcomed, cherished and protected, and empowered with choice, you're doing a great job. They will feel, this person I feel good about. I feel secure. And nobody buys unless they feel safe, right? Nobody
and so
wants to work with you.
So, Gary, what you're saying is that if you, in essence, make it about them, and not all about you, that you're more likely to retain the people on your team, as opposed to being in that constant panic of having to replace people because they keep dropping off your group. Okay, all right.
Yes, and I do think a team, you have to kind of notice that if you're the business owner, in a couple, you're always about the we. Most people, they forget that the third entity in a couple is the we. If you're not paying attention to the we, you're going to be lacking something. When I sit in the chair and there's a couple opposite me, I'm not asking what's going on just in him and her. I'm looking at the third entity. And for a business that needs support, and we all need support, that we comes in as a team. So we're always about a business owner who's running a secure style in their business is offering a team. That doesn't mean I'm above, so to speak, but I'm a part of the team, and how can I serve you as you serve me?
Gary, I think that's very important, especially in entrepreneurial relationships. Now, I come out of the military, which has very, very prescribed relationships. In other words, as an officer, you generally don't fraternize with enlisted. And within the officer ranks, if you're a lieutenant, it's doubtful that you're going to be hanging out at the bar with the general. So your relationships are more prescribed. And they're in some respects a bit more formal. And I sort of found the same thing in corporate as well. If you didn't really, you interacted with your subordinates, but not in a close, personal sort of way. So how do you help people who've been sort of indoctrinated into those kinds of relationships to step into that we as a team, as well as the whole welcome, worthy, empowered, and cherished? How do you help them do that?
Well, I think in terms of, if you're looking at organizational psychology, the we and the team has to start from above. Mm-hmm. If you have an organization that truly is, we're the hot shots, I'm the CEO, and I'm just going to do what I want to do, and you're going to follow me, you will get resistance. People won't feel it. But you can offer, but I think it starts at the top. If we're business owners, we have to be the general that, people will follow a general into a war if they think the general has their best interest at heart. Where you get less than popular results is when a Napoleon is sitting there having you attack Moscow in the middle of winter, right?
Yes. Or the Germans who attacked Russia in the middle of winter.
That's right. And, what I know of, I'm not an expert in military history, but I do know that when I played for, basketball, if I felt the coach had my back, I would do anything. And if I thought he was a jerk and he was just all about his own ego and how many wins he had under his belt, I had less incentive. Mm-hmm. So I think as leaders, we have to put a little of our ego in check and say, we are building a community here. Our work has to be in the midst of creating a generational influence and transformation. It's about how am I serving as well as being served. If we can do that, our people will follow us and we will have well-motivated teams.
And Gary, I think that's so very true. One of my favorite visions of Douglas MacArthur, and I know he was a challenge as a general to manage as well as his whole personality and that kind of thing. But there was this really powerful image in a TV show that was done on the key players in World War II and what they were like in World War I. And they have a scene of him on the ground with his troops, and he's in the middle of his troops, directing them forward, and he's going with them and everything else. So he was definitely not a general who sat back in the headquarters and planned strategy. He was out there with his troops, and I think that's one of the things that made him such a powerful leader, at least in World War I. He had challenges with political consensus, but as far as leading his troops, he was amazing. And so I think I agree with you that it's get rid of the ego and be a part of the we of the team is really critical. Yeah. Now, Gary, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. You also work with neuro-linguistic programming. And so how does that work in healthy relationships?
Well, neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, is really the art of helping your brain make the changes you want. It's about having neurons connect to other neurons and make better friends than the ones that have been limiting you. So what we're really looking for is so people have what they want, and then oftentimes what they want is really scaring the part of them that got safe with not having that. For instance, if someone was if they were never really, I'll give you one example. I know one person wanted to speak, and she came to me years and years ago trying to get on stage, and she couldn't, and she needed to for her business. What we found out was that when she was 4, she lived with a mother that every time her mother saw her, she would tend to beat her. So being seen equals getting beaten. So she wanted to be seen, she wanted to be recognized, but at a very early level, her brain said seen equals unsafe. So when she got on stage, she would have such fights she couldn't speak because a primitive part of her brain was not seeing an audience of 50, but an audience of 50 muggers. We had to go back and really reassociate, and really with some variety of techniques, one of which is called re-imprinting. But you can go back if you know how to speak to that early part of the brain. You can get it, you can add resources, you can get it to be safe with what you want. But until you do, it will fight you tooth and nail for its original sense of safety. So NLP is really the art of giving your brain the safety it needs so you can have what you want.
Fascinating. I know I was 7 when my grandmother told me that I should never stand up in front of groups of people and speak, that I wasn't very good at it. And so I understand that, holding on to that. And, I guess I was in my early 30s before I actually felt comfortable being on stage, being in front of a group of people, and not being scared to death that I was going to fumble and do a horrible job and that they were going to hate me and this kind of thing. So I understand rewiring the brain and being able to use it to get into healthy relationships, to do the things that you need to do for your company and for your business and that kind of thing. So we talked about mindset on the show back a month or so ago. So you're saying that it is also your mindset that sets you up for healthy relationships, correct?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And mindset, believe it or not, is always influenced by whatever we deemed safe or not safe. It really is. But our mindset is really, what sort of filters do we carry around in life? I mean, you can see couples. What man I worked with and wondered why his relationship was going south. But from an early time, he had this feeling of, when will love turn against me? So he was always had this filter, when will love turn against me? And he was always looking for ways to spouse. And eventually he drove her away. He came to me saying, how do I fix what's going on in my relationships? And this is what's really interesting. What we found out was it came down to an incident early in life. When he was 4, and his father, who was a great father, married 53 years, never did anything before or after like this, he turned and beat on him. And he couldn't understand it. And from that time, he thought, oh my God, when will love turn against me? And he drove away 2 wives. How? Because he had this filter, when will love turn away? When he came to an event, his brother, who had been married 25 years, was with his support. And he shared that story, and I remember seeing his brother's face drop to the floor. He says, that's why you're twice divorced? He says, you got it all wrong. I was 9, you were 4. You got too close to the campfire. We were camping, and your pants caught on fire. Dad didn't turn against you. He beat the flames out of your pants. But his brain made a painful limiting decision that then became a filter to look out for the safety. When will love turn against me? And that became a mindset, and it became a way, and eventually both of his wives says, I can't handle the mistrust.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just mindset, it's what's underneath the mindset.
So it's that subconscious, unconscious portion of the brain that is, in essence, ruling your relationships. And when we come back from break, we will go further into this. So stay tuned.
Become our friend on Facebook. Post your thoughts about our shows and network on our timeline. Visit facebook.com/Voice America.
Let leadership expert Linda Patten be your guide to uncovering the leader that lives within you and that you are meant to be. Through her signature training programs and workshops, Linda takes you every step of the way to help you tap into your personal leadership power, design a clear vision, build a loyal, effective team, and create a practical plan to make your dream come true. Get started now by scheduling a free, no-obligation 30-minute strategy session with Linda Patten. Contact her at linda@daretodreamwithlinda.com. That's linda@dare2dreamwithlinda.com.
Have you had a chance to check out Voice America's online magazine and blog, Press Pass? If you love our hosts and shows, check out articles that give an even deeper perspective. Plus topics about health and fitness, movie reviews, philosophy, business tips and tactics, spirituality, positive thought, current events, and even more about your favorite host. It's just a click away at vapresspass.com. That's vapresspass.com. VA Press Pass by Voice America. All access, all the time.
Voice America Women. Your passion starts here.
You are listening to Leadership Stars with Linda Patten. To reach the show today, please call 1-866-613-1612. That's 1-866-613-1612. You may also send an email to Linda at daretodreamwithlinda.com. Now, back to Leadership Stars.
Welcome back. Welcome back. I'm here with my guest, Gary Salyer, and we're talking about relationships, healthy relationships, both as a single and as couples. And now we've gotten into how to develop those kinds of relationships with your team to create that we. And as we went on break, I'm sure you were thinking about, gee, was there a time in my life when something happened and it's colored the rest of my life? And then I hear from family member or somebody else who was there that it was an entirely different picture than what my mind picked up. And I think that's so very, very important. One of the things I've learned long ago about the unconscious is that every time you pull it up, it's like a fish story. It gets bigger, it changes, whatever. And that if you have brothers and sisters and you say, gee, do you remember the time that mom and dad did blah? And they go, no, it wasn't like that. It was really like this. That we all perceive some of those situations that are really driving our other relations, our current relationships, can be very different depending upon who saw them and what was going on. Have you worked with siblings around situations like that where one person thinks he was being hit and the other one goes, no, he was beating out in flames, and that kind of thing that has really made some changes?
Well, I tell that story because I think it's the best story I've ever had for something that people kind of miss. People will tend to say, life is this way, people are this way, men or women are such and such. The brain creates experience. It's not the same as life. It's not the same as love, real love. It's not the same as men. It's not the same as women. Our brains are experience-creating machines. And that experience is influenced by a lot of things, and the brain has some bugs. And if we're not careful, we can be trapped in a painful experience. And the worst part of it is when we adopt that and then we make an identity out of an experience that can be adjusted to something more positive. The real key to life is to notice and observe the experience you're having, and then to say, is this experience serving me? Because experience is inner. It's not outer. And in the moment people realize that their complaint about life is an experience that's generated inside their brain, they just found the doorway to their real life and what they really want.
So, Gary, you're saying that, our thoughts, most of which are subconscious, rule our feelings, and our feelings rule our actions. So that's the whole fight, flight, appease. And then it's those actions that create results. And so individuals, for the most part, say, well, if I change how I do this, in other words, the action, I can change the result. And so they do something different and they finally get the same result. So you're saying that you have to change those thoughts. You have to change that memory. You have to flip it on its end so that it supports you, so that the feelings support the actions, support the results that you want. Yes?
Yes. And a lot of changing the experience is changing the story we tell about love or the story we tell about success, right?
Right.
And one of the things attachment theory knows is that there is such a thing called a secure story, and that the anxious and the avoidance tell stories that eventually disempower them or create more of the same experience. We also know that those stories you can tell the attachment of somebody's child by listening to the story of the parent with 85% accuracy. We tend to pass down our experience to the the stories we tell. You know, for a secure story it's something like, you know, I had a borderline mother. Not everything went so well when I was a child. We'll just put it that way. And I could say, oh my God, my mother was, you know, and I had all these horrible things, and it just so crippled me. Or I could say, you know, it was really interesting. I had this borderline mother. And there were some real painful things, like the day she kicked me out of my house because I wanted to go to college, and I lived my senior year. But I learned a lot of lessons from there. And yeah, there's a few things I can still work on, but I have grown so much, and it really did force me to learn some big lessons. And it's made me more empathetic towards people's pain. So yeah, there's a few things back there I could still be working on, but generally speaking, I've understood it, and my experience doesn't run me. I'm in control of that, and I'm actually kind of glad I went through it, because I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing. That's very different than a victim story, or the story of somebody that says, you know, I'm never going to trust again, and they wind up being more of a perpetrator.
Okay. So, Gary, you have a free gift to offer to the audience. Could you tell us a little bit about it, please?
Yeah. If you go to my website, it's www.garysalyer.com, Salyer. On the right side, I'm actually giving away Chapter 1 of the book that I'm writing, Safe to Love Again. It's almost complete, Linda. I've just got about 6 more weeks of writing. And then and there's also on the tab above, there's something, Attract Your Dream Man. And there's a 24-page blueprint on how to attract your dream man. If you're a man and you want to, you could just kind of read it. I wrote it for women, but it would have the same principles. So there's 2 free gifts there, and both of them, all you do is just give the email, and you can get some really cool tips on what it takes to do the deep internal work, not just the coaching or flirting and fashion or things like that, but the deep internal work that allows your system to be safe with love, so you can attract someone who will wonderfully love you back. That's what I can offer, those 2 things.
That's great, Gary. I have a question for you. So what would the world be like if everyone had healthy relationships, not only with themselves, but with their significant other and also with their teams? What would that world look like?
Well, I personally think, and the more and more I look at the world, I see attachment everywhere. When people feel a disconnect with a government or corporate America, what they're really objecting to is that sense they don't feel they're in a secure relationship where someone gets their needs, where someone cherishes them for who they are. So the more that all of us develop secure relationships within ourselves, with a significant other, and within our businesses or our teams, the more we tend to offer to other people. And I think there would be a ripple effect. We would have a better society. And I don't say that glibly. I do mean to say that all of us are 100% of the time, the part of our brain, a mammal brain that's looking for bonds, is always looking, checking out, am I safely bonded no matter what situation? So the more that all of us can offer that, the better we'll feel. And I think there is just so much unlimited resources that, and potential we would be able to offer the world by allowing them to all untap their inner resources rather than fighting the anxiety. And so that's what I see. I think the way that humanity really evolves is by offering each other the security. So of being felt and being worthy and cherished, that frees our mental energy to do things and to create a society that truly is great. I mean, that may be idealistic, but I know that when I'm at my best, I am feeling safe and secure and protected.
Mm-hmm. And so in order to have a safe and secure world, the relationships that we have with the people within it are critical. And so looking at, across nations, across religions, across genders, across races, having that sense of being secure and supported and, as you said, welcomed and cherished and all that and worthy would go a long way to creating a safer, more peaceful, more cohesive world than what we have right now. Yes?
Oh, in that world, if you are really welcoming each other, in spite of the differences, in spite of the varieties that is just endemic to the human situation, if you're trying to acknowledge the worthiness for everybody to have their needs, and you are cherishing, protecting, and empowering with choice, where is there a possibility of oppression? Where is there a possibility of a government or a corporation going rogue, or any of the or being insensitive? I am sometimes impressed when I've read about CEOs that when they were going through economic downturn, took a cut themselves to keep so they didn't have to cut all of the jobs and their business, and because they were in it with their employees, and their employees would come back and then just really support them in ways and do things above and beyond to keep the company afloat. This is that's what human beings are geared for. We're geared to be mutually supportive. We do not do well as a species when we're doing the Lone Ranger thing. We need a community to grow and prosper and to be our best selves. It takes a village to have a great life, and we need that secure village.
And I think that's so true. And Gary, I have a real quick story. When I was pregnant with my first child, the company that I was working with was having a downturn, and I was told I needed to cut 3 people in my department. And I said, that's about equal to my salary, and I'm going to be gone till the first of the year on maternity leave. How about if I cut me? And, we hire me back when I've got budget for the following year. And they thought that was such a creative idea that, in essence, I actually also worked during that time. We rewrote every program that we had in the department. It was a training department, and we rewrote every one of them, and I reviewed them and made comments and all that, even though I, quote, wasn't working. And we had the most powerful set of training programs following that, because everyone loved the fact that, I didn't cut people when I didn't have to, and when I could actually use my salary to keep the unit afloat. So I think you're right. I think it's that sense of inclusion and that sense of feeling secure that, gee, they're not going to cut me just because, they need more money in the department. And I think that's really key to people feeling secure. So, Gary, I'm going to ask you for one last tip around healthy relationships, and especially those around healthy relationships in your team, in your business.
Well, the basic line that I come down to, if I had to take anything from all of the things I've taught or written, it's one line I learned from. I was interviewing a woman who was married 55 years, and I said, "What's the secret to your marriage?" And she goes, "I take no BS. I give no BS." And I really thought about it, and that's the mantra that I live with most. Whenever I'm with whether I'm part of a team or I'm the leader of a team or I'm in a relationship with anybody, I try to think, how do I only give the good stuff no matter what's appropriate? That might be just thanking somebody at Starbucks. Thank you for, making my coffee right. But it's making sure that we're not giving those feelings. We only give the feelings of welcomed, worthy, cherished, and empowered. And if I give any other feeling, I'm giving BS. And I monitor my behavior in that. So I think in all of my relationships, I look at those 4 feelings and I say, how can I give them? And how can I monitor myself? If I give anything less, then how can I go back and make a repair if possible? That's the thing. Always think about, how am I making that other person feel? If we can make them feel secure in that moment, and according to whatever level of our relationship is, it's different for a spouse than someone at Starbucks, obviously, we're doing our job in the universe. And I think the universe will mirror us back with a secure life.
That's great. And Gary, there's a commercial that's like that it's that sort of pay it forward. Somebody holds a door for somebody, and that causes them to do, and it becomes a cumulative act, and it impacts so many people. So I think you're absolutely right. Not taking any BS and not giving any BS, but really looking at those 4 aspects of being welcome, being worthy of your needs being met, empowering in choice, and feeling cherished and protected. I think if we move in that direction, we can build extremely powerful teams with deep and lasting relationships. And on that note, I'm going to say thank you, and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you for tuning in to Leadership Stars. Please join Linda Patten for another engaging edition of our program next Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time and 10 a.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America Women's Channel. We'll feature another noted leader next week.
Thanks again for listening to the preceding program, brought to you on the Voice America Women's Channel. For more information about our network and to check out additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericawomen.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the preceding program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.